Hey, what's up, guys? So we're back here, episode 2 of what we have, since the last episode, decided to call the Riddle of Steel webcast. So that is from here on out and retroactively what this will be called. Iron and Blood presents the Riddle of Steel. So I'm here, episode 2, here with my brother, my friend, my mentor, Mr. James Clingerman. What's up, James?
How's it going?
Good. So James is a 3rd degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and all around insanely tough dude, knowledgeable dude, technical dude. So tell us about that road, because I know you didn't start out as a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So as the lead in, let's hear about your road in.
Okay. Yeah, man. So oddly enough, like, I don't know. I always say I was born wanting to be a martial artist. I just always wanted to fight. Like, just something that appealed to me. You know what I mean? Kind of that one-on-one, I guess man versus man. And I always wanted to be like a good guy, like a superhero, like G.I. Joe,
right.
Superman, whatever. I remember like playing, imaginary friends because I didn't have any real friends. But, just even being a kid, like make believe, I was always like the good guy, and, good guys got to know how to fight. So, I was always interested in martial arts. I watched Kung Fu Theater every Saturday, and
I did as well. It was on awesome. USA.
Heck yeah.
Kung Fu Theater. Yeah, fuck
yeah. But I'm super shy kid. Could not really function well in groups. Probably today they would diagnose me with like social anxiety disorder. It was. I checked out a lot of books from the library, and back in the day, those were things where you actually went into this building and they had like these paper book things,
right?
And you had to like check them out,
go through the card catalog and like do a little research.
You had a little
that
stamp.
Was your Google was these fucking drawers,
Jesus. Yeah. So I'd walk out of there with every book they had, or every book I could check out and read them all the way through a couple times and take them back and get the next batch. And when I was like 13, I started late as far as martial arts go. When I was 13, my dad literally just kind of pulled me in his room one day and he was like, "Look, I'm tired of you punching and kicking around, and you're not doing this for real. Like, so I'm taking you somewhere." I was like, no.
So you're doing your own your fake katas in the living room?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I kind of like had this like Rain Man episode, like karate burn James. So he was like, you get to pick, and me, and he goes, "I'm going to sign all 3 of us up," which was a good move. Like, it wasn't something he wanted to do. It wasn't something my little sister wanted to do for sure. But, I think he understood that like I was having some kind of issue just going out, like that I was shy.
Right.
And so
he just had a fatherly instinct about getting you into something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, we basically just opened up the yellow pages, kind of read through and like called a few places, and place that was closest to us basically is where we went, and started with that. And the karate wasn't really my thing, but I was pretty natural at it. Like I went in and I was beating up higher ranks, like even though it was just like the touch sparring, but I enjoyed it, because it was at least some form of combat where I actually got to like test myself against these other guys. And I did that for a little while, and then eventually he quit and my sister quit, and then I didn't have a ride, and so I guess I quit. And then when I was 16, when I was old enough to drive, like I found this jiu-jitsu school. So
this was Japanese jiu-jitsu, correct?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So it was karate. It was a karate judo school, and the judo instructor decided one day that he was a jiu-jitsu master, and he started teaching jiu-jitsu from books. Probably that used to be in the library.
And to be clear, there used to be a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
Before the internet could call you out.
Yeah.
And for your bullshit and like bullshit accomplishments, there was a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, and I've always told people, like, guys are like, "Oh, that's the beauty of the martial arts. You can take this style and this style and this style, and you can make up your own system." And I'm like, that's great, but that's not what he says he did.
Right.
If he said he did that, that's one thing. But to lie and say, well, I learned it from this Japanese, like he had a big storyline, you know what I mean? And, I was ignorant at the time, but I was there for a few years and finally kind of figured it out and talked to some other guys that had been around longer, and they're like, yeah, that guy's full of it, man. Like, not jiu-jitsu at all. And but there was no Brazilian jiu-jitsu around. There was no jiu-jitsu that I wanted to learn. And until I met a guy, Greg Eldred, and he was a blue belt. So Royce and Horion Gracie started this association, kind of worldwide, probably just in the U.S. at that time, and it was just like these blue belts across the country that they went and they kind of got certified. And
so guys that were already doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but
yeah,
didn't have an association with anyone.
Right. Yeah. So and at the time it was like people would travel out to California to train with the Gracies, and they would travel. The Gracies do some seminars, and people ranked up through that. And then they did this instructor course and their association, and they started several, like probably every state had one at some point. So, but yeah, so I started. My instructor was a 2-stripe blue belt at the time, and so that was kind of my first taste of it, and it was pretty cool. It was way different than anything I had done, and I even had like the Gracie tapes, like when I was doing the judo and the fake jiu-jitsu, and so I at least had an understanding of the technique, and I knew, like I could watch the video, and then I could see the way that instructor taught it and go, that's not right. That's not the Gracie jiu-jitsu that you told me you knew. So
right on. I think a lot of people that got into jiu-jitsu later in life or after the explosion of the UFC, like long after the explosion of the UFC, where people take for granted. I've had people say, oh, I started training jiu-jitsu in my town, but, I went to this place and they only had there was a purple belt there teaching class, and they're like, that seems like bullshit to me, so I didn't stay. And I was thinking, it used to be, if you were a purple belt, you were a fucking god.
yeah,
because there was nobody, like there was not just black belts everywhere or brown belts or purple belts everywhere. Exactly. If you had a fucking colored belt in jiu-jitsu, like that, it doesn't matter what color it was, that meant something, because there was so little people out there with rank at all that could teach stuff. And like you said, your first instructor was a blue belt.
Yeah.
But he was a blue belt, and that was something. Yeah. So a lot of people now, they'll say, oh, I don't want to learn if it's not from a black belt. Like, well, why?
Yeah.
Do you know more than that brown belt or that? Once you get into jiu-jitsu and you realize how few people make it past blue. How many people just either fucking quit as a white belt because it's so frustrating, or they get their blue belt and it was such an overwhelming set of obstacles where they get their blue that they feel like they reached the end of this quest and then they stop.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, so, addressing the blue belt thing, like in jiu-jitsu, we typically say like your blue belt, your Brazilian jiu-jitsu blue belt, at least, under me and most guys, I think still, it's basically the equivalent of a black belt in another martial art. Mm-hmm. Like a blue belt is a solid understanding of the fundamentals, the fundamental positions, top and bottom, the fundamental submissions, and the defenses to those. And that takes a long ass time. Like it takes a really long time,
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
And there's more involved. There's more little tiny details in every single technique than there is in striking. Like you can take karate and taekwondo and hapkido and all these other martial arts, and they're basically the same. They've got little variances, but there's nothing like jiu-jitsu. Right. Judo comes close, sambo comes close, but
aspects.
Yeah. Takedowns and grappling. But positionally and the way the art evolves constantly, there's nothing like it out there. But yeah, I started jiu-jitsu, it was 2018, so I started jiu-jitsu 19 years ago, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And yeah, a blue belt at the time was like, oh my God, this guy's a blue belt, he's got a belt in jiu-jitsu, like that's amazing.
Right.
I remember the first purple belt I ever met outside of California. And even out there, man, I can think of there were 2 guys that were purple belts, like if you were a black belt, your name was Gracie or Machado.
Right.
And that was it. So
maybe Fada.
yeah. In the U.S.
Right.
The U.S. But yeah, and my wife said it great. Like my wife just got her purple belt a few months ago, and then she went out and she competed No-Gi Worlds and won Worlds, first purple belt tournament.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so super proud of her for that. But she's like, when she got her purple belt, she was like crying, and she's like, I said I wouldn't cry when I got it, but she tells a story of like how, because she started jiu-jitsu like 15 years ago, and not solidly, but she's like, purple belts were royalty. She's like, she remembers like, because I started with Eldred at blue belt, and then we met Scott and Eric Sullivan, and they were purple belts living in, Indianapolis, and it was like, no, there can't be purple belts living in Indy. There's just no way. That's ridiculous. And went and met them, and like it was like mind blown. Like, oh my God, like these guys have been doing jiu-jitsu forever, and
very
so
physical
good.
Purple belts.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, Scott and Eric are amazing. Scott's at the time was a world-class kickboxer. I mean, he's one of those guys that should have been in the first K1 and was actually invited to fight in the first UFC before he knew jiu-jitsu. So he was at upper echelon of like those heavyweight kickboxers. His dad Eric, like that is just their whole family's physical. But like Eric, man, he was like a semi-pro softball pitcher, and he won a gold in the police Olympics in arm wrestling, and like just super physical guys. And,
right. They come from a culture of that family-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so meeting purple belts. I believe that was in probably 98, 99. And after a while, and Greg was coming over training with those guys too. He was like, man, purple belts, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then he got his purple, and I think it was late 99 when Eric he decided he was going to actually open a school, because we were just training in his garage. And it was around that time, okay, let's, we went to Greg. It was like, there was a handful of us, about 5 of us. We went to Greg and said, hey, we're going to start training over with, with Scott and Eric. We're going to join their team, and, would love to have you come. And he had his own business. He had his own school, and, he was like, no, you can't do that. Right. Completely understood, but, I think it was late 99 we officially switched, teams. So it was Mario Roberto was the team at the time. And so yeah, I ended up getting started jiu-jitsu in 97, got my got my blue. I got my blue fast because actually there was no stripes. So like in jiu-jitsu, you have 4 stripes per belt. We didn't do stripes on white belts at the time, so I got my blue in like 4 months. But I competed a lot. I came in with some grappling background and knew the curriculum stuff from the tapes.
And also, full disclosure, you're like fucking Rain Man about technique. Like you just like analyze it, pick it up, like no one else I've ever known. So there is that too. Yeah, as far as your ability to break down and analyze and absorb a position and then know quickly 10 variations from that position is not something I've seen often. So that is
nice.
You have that like fucking mutant power as well, which is probably to you not anything remarkable. It's just how you are, and not to sit here and kiss your ass, but like that is something too. When you say you got your blue belt in 4 months, it doesn't surprise me. You know what I mean? Your aptitude is constantly blows my mind. But anyway,
well, thank you for
that.
No, I'm totally flustered. You gave me a compliment. I don't know what to do with it now. I'm like,
short circuit.
Yeah. Compliment Burn James.
But that it doesn't surprise me that you got your blue belt pretty quickly. That makes a lot of sense to me. I, however, did not. And with me, it's always the hard way. And as you well know, because you're my coach, and that's, it's a different learning style, I'm sure. So anyway, you made the switch to training with the Sullivans.
Yep. Yeah. So, I made the switch to train with those guys, and at the time I think I had 2 stripes on my blue, and then I was with those guys up to black belt. So, Scott and Eric, Scott actually ended up moving to Texas, and he's got a fantastic gym down there. He does a lot of other work. He's got like 9 kids, like they're
Right.
Catholic. So, and then Eric is
Sullivan? No way, not
yeah.
Catholic.
And Eric was Eric was a retired Evansville police officer.
Mm-hmm.
So he went back in doing some security work, but he actually was in a really bad car accident and kind of retired him from jiu-jitsu. So he stayed brown for a long time. But yeah, so he opened his school March 3rd, 2000, and then I was assistant instructor there. Kind of ended up opening my own place. Kept the same name and everything, but I opened mine, and it was in 2000. It was later that year, but we used that March 3rd date as our opening, just because I was so involved with everything. So, but yeah, I ended up getting my purple belt, and I held blue for 4 years. So I think blue is probably typically the longest belt you hold actively training. It's kind of that one where you're like, okay, you understand the fundamentals, but now let's see what direction your jiu-jitsu goes in.
Yeah, I was a blue belt forever.
Yeah.
and you're right. Like that is that is a war of attrition. The blue belt.
You almost find yourself like your blue belt. You kind of get it, and then you build on it, and you build on it, you build on it, and then you get fancy, and then it's like, oh, there's your purple, or you never got fancy, but.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a fancy. My grappling is super basic and not fancy. I took with my own struggles and journeys at blue belt. I felt like I found myself 10 fucking times.
Yeah.
And realized, no, that's not it. And then let's scrap half of that and then go back. Like there was a lot of, and plus I suffered a couple of injuries that actually pretty gnarly. One pretty gnarly injury put me out for a while. So I was a blue belt for quite a while, and I barely by the skin of my teeth got my blue belt.
Oh yeah.
Yep. When I tested for my blue, I remember like I barely got it. You were like, if it was up to me, you wouldn't have gotten it that day.
That's funny. Yeah, I was trying to remember your blue belt promotion. I totally spaced that. So yeah, at the time, like I'll just tell the story because it's sad. So at the time, my coach, like I had just gotten my black belt, probably, I had it less than a year. And so my coach was still doing all of our belt promotions. And so we had a couple of affiliates, and like all the guys got together. There was like 7 of you testing for blue. And man, it was atrocious. Like I don't even know what happened. Like everybody was so good, and like everybody deserved it, but
It was that test taking.
Yeah.
And I tell you what started, I got the jitters.
Yeah.
And what started it was
Pantone.
Was me and Pantone. Yeah, Mike,
Yep.
Pantone, we at the same time were testing. Mike panicked and got really nervous.
He twisted his ankle.
Yeah.
And flipped out.
Yeah, he flipped out. He injured himself. And then I remember looking into his eyes, and he looked at me, and I was like, and it just fucking spread like a virus. I'm like, oh, now I'm fucking freaking out. So yeah. And then like, it was a bungle. I was fucking up things that I knew that I'd
like
done a million
basic
times.
arm bar from guard. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Why are you embarrassing me?
You were just standing there like, what are you doing? I think I got my blue belt on God, what was it? It was somebody was like,
Peruvian
necktie, and did the Peruvian necktie. And that was what tipped me over the edge on getting my belt. You were like, if it was up to me, you wouldn't have gotten it that day. And I'm like, I agree. I agree. I don't know what the fuck that was. Yeah, that was but that summed up the blue belt experience for me perfectly. Was my introduction to blue belt and like that, like complete brain fart fuck up, because a lot of blue belt was that little like blind alleys, fucking up, backing up. Nope. You know what I mean? Like you said, you find yourself in that time. And I feel like I found myself 10 times and then realized it was not me. and then had to go back and backtrack. There was a lot of frustration and beating the head against the wall, and I think that's why a lot of people don't move past blue, because it's hard, and like you said, it's probably the one you hold the longest.
Yeah.
It's fucking, it's tough. And I remember when you gave me my purple belt, I was like emotionally overwhelmed, man. It was like I was like shaking when I got it, because dude, that was a fucking. And people ask me, people were asking me for like a solid year that knew me out, like, do you not have your purple belt yet? Do you not have your purple belt yet? Nope. Well, how come you haven't gotten promoted? And I'm like, because it's not time. I'll get promoted when it's fucking time, but it was, it was a tough road of learning, and not, I was tough, like to roll with. I've always been pretty hard to roll with, you know what I mean? Physically, but it didn't mean I was, I was tough and hard to submit, but it didn't mean I was good at jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So I had to like find partway through that, hey, you can't muscle fuck your way through this, you can't, just outlast and be tougher than this dude to get through this. So you have to use jiu-jitsu and correct jiu-jitsu, not sloppy jiu-jitsu. Don't dive on, no diving on leg locks, no shit like that, so it, I had to come to some realizations about myself, and like, okay, yeah, this is not working. This has worked for me in the past, and out in the world it works for me 99% of the time, but in here it will not fly. So I have to actually humble myself, shut up, and try to become good at jiu-jitsu, not just good at rolling. If that makes sense. So yeah, no, I fully, the blue belt was, I could write a fucking book on my experience as a blue belt.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, maybe I should.
Yeah. Well, and like talking about that, like I always say, like I tend to look at like 4 pillars, like technical knowledge, like you've got to know technique,
right?
Not
just Peruvian neckties.
Yeah, more than one. You gotta know a bunch of them, and well enough to teach. And each belt level is a little different. Your time in, like I'm not one of those guys that thinks, you can just get a black belt in 4 years. Like, yeah, there's a lot of really tough guys out there that can hold their own even with black belts. But if you don't have the technique to back it up, it doesn't fly, right?
Right.
And I always use the example of, I can take your average, barely scraping by boxer, and I can put him in a karate match or a fight or whatever you want, and he's going to knock out 9 out of 10 karate black belts.
Right.
Easily. Probably the number's probably higher than that. That doesn't make him a black belt in karate. He doesn't know the moves. He doesn't know the kata. He doesn't know the requirements to get those belts. But he's going to win every time, like in a fight.
Right.
So technical knowledge, time in, how well do you roll in class with peers, and how well do you compete? And then, I always tell guys, like, if we have a lot of guys that don't want to compete. If you don't compete, like, these 3 have to be stronger. You've got to be rolling in class more. It's going to take you a little bit longer. You better know a little more. If you compete really well, then yeah, you can be a little weaker. If I've got a guy that goes out and he wins worlds 6 times as a brown belt, and it's probably time for him to be a black belt. Regardless of how technical he is. And that's not we've got some really good,
whether he can demonstrate 1,000 moves or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you got to know what you're doing in order to progress, and yeah, you should get tougher along the lines, but there's going to be that breaking point that, like, where you're old and your body stops, like you're physically you're not improving anymore.
Right.
So at that point, like, you got to understand the technique even better. You got to apply the technique even sharper, and you've got to learn more to start passing it on. I mean, really, like, I'm broken. I'm old and broken. My body sucks. So it's easier for me to learn technique and master technique than it is to go Hulk out on somebody.
Right. Well, and you and I roll, and if in the gym, if we're lifting weights, like you're not like you're not an exceptionally strong weightlifter.
I'm very physically weak. Very
in ways,
very
but
physically
then rolling with you, I've never. What do you weigh right now?
170, 75 maybe.
Right. Yeah, and I've never rolled with someone your weight that feels like they weigh a fucking 1,000 pounds when they're on top. You know what I mean? So, you know, you make it, even demonstrating in class when we're demonstrating stuff and I'm your partner, and you're demonstrating things, the crushing weight and pressure when you're on top is unreal. But it's not because you're strong in the gym or anything like that. It's because the technique is perfect. The angle of your forearm, as you know what I mean, the way you put weight on the hip, like whatever, you know, is perfect. So that, you know, like you're saying, that does, you know, it doesn't always, technique doesn't always beat power, but if you can outlast the power, it will beat it every time. Yeah. Every time. It's good to have both, or to know how to apply, like you know, you're not like a gym guy. You're not like powerlifting and shit like that in the gym, but it does sure as fuck doesn't feel like it rolling with you. It feels like you lift weights every day. So it's that body awareness and knowing exactly how to use leverage, which I think is a huge thing in jiu-jitsu, which is it's a tenet of jiu-jitsu, leverage, right? Like how to utilize leverage. I think a lot of people try to jump past that, you know, which maybe is why they stay stuck at blue belt or don't ever come back, you know, which is one of the things that, you know, was hard for me to learn. I had to learn the hard way as a blue belt. Like, okay, can't use strength all the time. You have to use leverage, and they're different. You know, the fact that they're not the same thing is that's a lesson to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
So mindset, man, mindset's something that is it's a big interest of mine, and something we talk about here a lot at the gym. And you know, one of the reasons that when I started training with you, one of the reasons that I quickly decided that this is my team. I'm not going anywhere else ever. Was your mental toughness and mindset. So I want to explore a little bit of that. You know, and everybody has their own rituals and minds, you know, and things that they use in mindset. And you often talk in class about that movie Over the Top, where he turns his hat around backwards, and that's that switch. So you talk about that switch a lot. You know, where the Stallone turns his hat around and it's time to win the arm wrestling contest or whatever. Yeah. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts on mindset and that switch and mental toughness.
Okay. Yeah. So I use Over the Top constantly. I make it homework for the guys in jiu-jitsu, and it's an older movie, so half the people have never even heard of it.
Poor millennials, they'll never know.
So I'm like, go watch it. I watched it recently. It still holds up. Still a good movie. You know, I mean, it's a classic '80s movie, but it's still worth it. But I never tell them. Why I wanted to watch it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, go watch this and come back to me and tell me why you were supposed to watch that. And a lot of them either don't watch it or they don't get it. But some of them, about half, will come back and they'll go, the switch.
Right.
I'm like, what switch? He's like, he turns his hat around. I'm like, explain it to me. I'm like, man, it's, you know, he said he's like a machine and he becomes somebody else. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And, you know, like, man, I think it was like probably Tony Robbins, like neuro-associative conditioning. You know, when I first kind of heard about that, I was like, you know, find this optimal space, like this. Find a time you've competed at your absolute best or done something at your absolute best, and find a trigger, find something that's familiar that you can use over and over and over to put yourself back in that space, in that mindset, or you know that whatever it may be.
Like a ritual act or a ritual object. Yeah.
Yeah. And man, actually I read The Art of Learning with Josh Waitzkin. If you're not familiar with Josh Waitzkin, he was the kid, the chess prodigy, the young chess prodigy. They did the book and the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Okay.
Quick read, really good book. But he is not autistic. I just naturally assumed he was. Really intelligent guy, speaks very well. But he also went on to be a Tai Chi push hands world champion. So like
That's interesting.
Yeah. But the book actually focuses a lot on his chess and his Tai Chi. And I believe at the time he wrote the book, he was just kind of exploring Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He also became Marcelo Garcia's first black belt.
Really?
In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So the guy's just a phenom. But he actually, and I need to reread it, but he actually starts with this giant process of putting yourself in the zone. And it's like, listen to this song, do this activity, do these number of breaths, and then that gets you in the zone. And as you go, you listen to the, 3/4 of the song, and then you only do the activity for 10 minutes instead of 15, and then you only take 5 breaths instead of 10, and you just keep lessening and lessening and lessening the ritual until the ritual is 1 breath.
And you're
to put
transformed.
You in the zone. Yeah. So that was kind of something I'd never heard before, and I really liked the way he broke it down. But when I compete, my ritual is I do my little tiny stretching, but my switch is I walk out on the mat. It's the feeling of the mat under my feet. I make sure to kind of grind my toes into the mat and just get that feeling, and it's just like that's my switch. That okay, it's competition time. Like no screwing around. Like ready to kill.
Right. So, and that's interesting that boiling down of the ritual to one single act and a switch, which is very practical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But not something that I think it's a process getting there. It's probably not something that you just, I decide this is going to be my switch. And then,
right.
You know what I mean? So was there a distillation process that you used?
Man, like I said, like when I first learned about kind of that associative conditioning, like I had to look, and fortunately I was competing a lot at the time, and I was a blue belt, and I was, I'd go out and I'd compete, and I'd have to sit and think about it and go, man, what was the difference between this day when I competed great and this day? And I looked at the people around me, I looked at the people coaching, I looked at the venue, I looked at the mats, and I looked at my gi, and I was like, oh, maybe it's the gi. It's not the gi.
Right.
It's not the gi.
Your lucky underwear.
Yeah, right. It wasn't anything like that. And so really I was like, man, I kind of did this little warm up here, and I didn't pay attention to everything else around. It was, when it was time to go, I walked out on the mat, looked at the mat. I literally and figuratively grounded myself. Just kind of pushed my feet into the mat a little bit, felt it, and just kind of sunk. And I put myself mentally right there on the mat and just kind of blocked everything else out. And it still works. I just did no-gi worlds, and it's been like, man, almost like 2 years since I've competed. I did one match in Hawaii, and the grounding didn't work. Nothing worked. I was like, I can't breathe.
You kind of took that. That was like a
it was like a
day's notice. You were on vacation.
Long flight.
Yeah, on vacation in Hawaii. Decides to to enter a tournament.
Yeah, I won though, so I guess it paid off. It just all my little mental tricks and things did not help. But
your jiu-jitsu carried you through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went out to Cali, and like I was like, man, no-gi worlds. I've never done this tournament before, and looking around, and all the cool guys are there. All the all these like guys I really look up to, and man, flawless. Like I felt great. Walked down the mat. First match, I was up 10 points. Tapped the guy. Like walked off the mat. Felt great. My neck always hurts, and my neck felt great. And I was like, yes, today's my day. And then made a dumb decision. Match number 2, lost right at the very end, by 2 points. So. But
and it can be at that level. It can be that easy.
Yep,
like you can be just up and dominating, and then one mistake at that level. Because even if you're a black belt, you could be a far better black belt than someone else, but they're still a black belt.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no chump black belts. Like,
right.
It's not in jiu-jitsu. So, but yeah, like mindset wise, like as far as training goes and stuff like that, like I feel like as people, as human beings, like our job is to continually evolve in some manner. It talked about, our bodies will reach their physical peak at some point where, our health starts deteriorating. No matter how hard we try, no matter how well we eat, no matter how we work out and stretch and do yoga and all these things, like there's going to be a point where everything goes the wrong way. But we can always read, we can always learn, we can, I don't listen to much music. I listen to podcasts almost constantly.
Right. And you a really avid reader. You read a lot, correct?
I try. I'm actually not. I have a hard time reading because I fall asleep really bad.
Okay.
Narcolepsy kind of runs in my family. Like, I even met my sister.
Yeah.
So, not to go off on a tangent, my sister's got horrible narcolepsy and cataplexy. So, like, she does the fainting goat thing. Like, if you surprise her or make her laugh, she.
So you like to screw with her?
Oh, dude, it's amazing. It's great.
Because you're still a big brother and you have to pick.
Yeah.
So you have to like scare her and make her topple over periodically.
It's wonderful. Just like I bought her a helmet one year for Christmas. I was like, just please wear this around me so I never feel bad when you fall. We take pictures of her. Like, we got so many pictures of her like just wiped out in an aisle in like Kroger or Walmart or something, where she just bit it in the cereal aisle. But yeah, I've always had a really hard time reading. I'm a good reader. I'm a strong reader. I just fall asleep really easily. So, probably, I wouldn't say past few years, but I've really just kind of scheduled the time, and that helps. And so
you're not, because I know that you read a lot. So this is actually like.
I do a lot of audiobooks.
Okay.
Because we travel so much.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll say, yeah, I read that book when I've actually listened to it.
Right. But you found a way. Is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
You schedule, you find a way,
Yep.
You make it happen. Which, to be honest, if you look at reading like training, you find a way to train.
Yeah.
You find a way to work out. You find a way to, you find a way to do a lot of things. You'll find a way to do pleasurable, self-destructive things if you allow it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, finding a way to schedule the time to read. I know a lot of people that'll say, I'd read more, but I don't have time to read. But I'm thinking, what the fuck do you do all day?
You haven't made it a priority.
No, do you have time to, if you have time to watch TV, if you have time to jerk off, if you have time to do a million things that don't really matter, you definitely have time to read. Or like you said, if you're traveling, you can listen to audiobooks. Like, you can get it in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's the thing is, like, I always laugh at people who have a 9-to-5 job and they're like, oh, I just don't have time. Like, what do you do after 5 p.m., man? Like, everyone goes home and sits on the couch and watches TV.
Right.
Or they do some other destructive thing, like, I mean, you know me, like, I don't drink. I've never had a drop of alcohol my entire life. I don't do any kind of drugs. Like, I don't do destructive things. Like, caffeine is like, that's it. It's pretty heavy for me.
And this is, you always have this on and off again battle with caffeine.
Oh,
like,
man, yeah.
You cut it out of your life for a while.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So my trick is I compete. When I compete, I don't drink caffeine, so I need to compete more, I guess. Maybe it's like a nature's sign of just going, compete more.
Right.
Yeah. So on the weekends, man, I'm not out at the bars. I'm not doing all this crazy stuff. I'm at home. I'm at a tournament. I'm at the academy, like cleaning it, making it better.
Right.
Fixing equipment or adding something new to it. Like, I just look at it as always improving. Myself, my academy, my knowledge base. My house, whatever. Like.
Right. And what would you say? In my opinion, just because I'm a part of it, I would say that you've built a tribe through coaching jiu-jitsu. You've built a band of brothers through coaching jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And that has to have some positive effect on you, because it has a positive effect on all of us. So that it has to feed back to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely. It's funny you said that. I was actually at a business meeting yesterday, and they asked what the top 4 qualities you liked about your business were, and one of them was the culture and the people in that culture. And my wife always says a rising tide raises all ships.
Right.
If I can make you a more enjoyable person to be around, then you're gonna make me a better person. And it goes with everything. Like, if I can make you better at jiu-jitsu, you're gonna push me to be better at jiu-jitsu. So yeah, like the guys at our academy, like they come from all walks of life, and guys and girls, and we have a really strong women's team that we've really built up in the past couple years.
You have a you have a more robust women's program than just about anywhere I've seen, which is pretty awesome because that's something that a lot of schools don't have, and I think that it turns women off to training that could be getting a lot out of it.
Oh yeah, especially jiu-jitsu is very, very in your face, personal space, kind of intimate almost, but that's exactly, as far as self-defense goes, that's exactly what women need,
right?
But you come in there and you're like, all right, I'm going to get in your guard, and you lay on top of some woman, you're sweaty, and like, nope, this is not for me.
right.
It's like, well, it's not, but that's why you should do it. Like, if you want to do self-defense. And unfortunately, now there's women that are really getting into it just because they enjoy the sport of it. They want to learn it, and they want to go out and they want to win these tournaments and stuff.
Right.
And that's awesome to see. But yeah, I still think that the self-defense and is a big part of it. So when they have these other women they can train with, it's a big part of them starting to get out there and see other women, and it's a little less intimidating. It's a little less rapey. Really. Like,
right.
So, and then also, like,
why have you been stuck in my triangle for an hour?
Yeah. But and it's also nice to have women who can kind of peer pressure other women.
Right.
Every time I have a girl come in, she's like, "Oh, I think I might want to maybe try it." And a lot of women come in for kickboxing. I'll go grab AJ, my wife, and a couple, maybe other girls will be like, "Get her in here, tell her she needs to do jiu-jitsu." And they'll go and peer pressure, and then next thing you know, they're not kickboxing, they're doing jiu-jitsu, and they're loving it, and they're competing, and
right.
So
it's they're not in the back of their head thinking this guy just wants to get my pants off. That's why he wants me in here. You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure.
I've read these stories about these jiu-jitsu schools that the guys are inappropriate with the girls and stuff, and I can say I've never had that happen at my academy that I've witnessed anyway, and it's a good thing. That stuff doesn't go well. So.
No, well, and I don't even think it's because you posted some edict. Hey, by the way, part of the rules is we don't rape women here.
Right,
like that's never. You've just built a good tribe of men that we all conduct ourselves a certain way, and if for no other reason, we always. I speaking for myself, and I can. In this, I'm sure this goes for most of the guys on the team that, I've talked with Joel Blanton about I've got an imaginary council of men in my head that I'm fucking accountable to at all times, and you're one of them, and I think that goes for everybody. We're always having to be, even if you're not there, accountable to you and accountable to this team and this brotherhood, which keeps guys on the straight and narrow. It's like it just keeps guys, and not just about groping broads or whatever, but like it keeps us accountable even when we could maybe not be accountable. So we're accountable even when we're not in your sight or whatever. And I think that's an important thing, and I think that is lost. This that real sense of upholding the honor of this group of men. I think it gets lost with some of the less traditional minded people that become involved in jiu-jitsu. They, you and I were talking about that the other day about a lot of people have lost that traditional martial arts respect, and lineage and legacy aspect. But I think that's part of why I like our team so much, because I hold, like I said, I have this imaginary council in my head that I have to not only explain my actions, but I run these fucking ideas by you guys in my head. Sometimes these ideas never come to fruition because I'm like, all these guys are telling me I'm being fucking stupid, so I don't do it. You know what I mean?
Imaginary James said,
what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? Absolutely not. But it's good, men that you feel accountable. This whole I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. It's not exactly true. I don't, if you're not a part of my tribe, or if you're some outsider stranger with a fucking opinion, I don't give a fuck what you think, because you don't mean anything to me. But I very much give a fuck what men that I respect think. Right. And my family and my tribe, and like my council of fucking guys in my head that I'm accountable to. So, I don't, for outsiders, I don't care what the world thinks. I don't virtue signal on social media, and I don't give a shit what the cause du jour of the moment is, but I care very much about what men that I respect think of me and think of what I do. I think that, I don't know, I think that it gets lost in translation often. You and I were talking about, like I said, we were talking about this the other day, that whole, that man on the mountain aspect of martial arts, where you seek out a master and you respect this man enough to like learn from him. And it's not that you eventually want to overtake him. You want to earn his respect to sit at the table with him. And I don't know what it is. I don't know, it's definitely not all jiu-jitsu academies or jiu-jitsu teams or whatever, but there's a disconnect with a certain amount of people with that. And you and I were talking about that the other day, and you had an interesting thought about that losing of that traditional martial arts ethos.
Yeah. Well, like I think a lot of people come from that traditional martial arts background where it's some guy and he's like, bow to your sensei, do this and do this, and
right.
it's kind of like this demanded respect instead of earned. You know
right.
what I mean? It's kind of like the respect your elders thing. Well, some elders are a-holes.
Right.
They don't deserve anyone's respect. Yeah, and so I think a lot of people, like got kind of turned off by the whole traditional martial arts and the bow to your sensei type, and just the impracticality of what they were actually being taught. And when jiu-jitsu came along, there weren't, especially here in the U.S., there weren't senseis. Like I said, I started with a blue belt guy. He's an engineer, and we'd come in, we'd go to a basement, and we'd roll around some mats, and all right, guys, have a good day. And so like, not necessarily that there was a lack of respect, but it was, I think a lot of the guys that kind of moved toward jiu-jitsu moved toward it not out of wanting, discipline or some fun social thing. They moved into it because they were like, I can kick someone's ass if I know that.
Right.
I can beat somebody up. And so a lot of guys come into it, and even if they, they just want a career in MMA, not necessarily bully somebody, but they come into it because it's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think a lot of guys, and I'm kind of that way too, like, when we started jiu-jitsu, it wasn't real formal. And so as we progressed, we never like kind of pulled that formality toward us, like I've added a little bit here and there enough to, kind of keep everything in line and, but overall we have a very respectful academy, the sensei thing, right? Like, black belts and other martial arts or Sifu, sensei, Shidoshi, whatever. But, like Hoist Gracie won the UFC, and like, most famous Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy is like, hey, Hoist, how's it going? It wasn't, oh, hey, professor or sensei or any of this stuff, like even the professor thing is relatively new. Mm-hmm. I was talking about going, I went to Hawaii and I got to train around, and I went to Bruno Ewald school, old school, like 4th degree, I believe, under like Hoyler Gracie. And, I was like, oh, hey, professor, what, how should I address you during class off the mats? And he was like, you're 3rd degree? Yeah. So you're a professor too, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, man, I never called anybody professor. He goes, what are we going to just stand here and professor each other to death? He's like, my name's Bruno. Call me Bruno.
Nice.
And I was like, cool. You can call me Professor James. But yeah, just it was just really cool to hear like an old school guy say that, because right. A lot of them kind of like, oh, professor, you professor me. And at the academy, like, guys do call me professor. I never correct them. Like, that's
guys that have heard that somewhere else.
Yeah. But I guarantee I've never said it. I wrote Professor James on my laundry basket, just like, hey, don't touch this. But we all go by Coach.
Right.
Coach James, Coach Kyle. Like, mm-hmm. and I think Coach, in the U.S. is something people understand. And it just means the same thing. Like sensei, Sifu, it all means teacher. Professor, right. It means teacher. It's just different languages. And here we don't call our baseball teacher, we call him baseball coach.
Right.
We don't call our football teacher a teacher, we call him a coach.
Right.
So in athletics, like, it's coach. And so we have a little bit of tradition. You know, we bow to finish class. A lot of academies bow to start class. A lot of academies bow on and off the mat. About half of our guys bow on and off the mat. You know, I'm never going to tell somebody not to. Sometimes I do. I don't normally.
I weirdly do. Every time I walk on the mat, I stop, you know what I mean, before I walk on. I don't know why I started it, but it's become such a ritual with me that now it's not it was never told to me to be this, we bow on the mat, but right as I'm starting to step on, I stop, give a short, half a second bow but for me, now it's time to learn.
Right.
Or it's time to coach.
Yeah, it's a trigger.
It's a trigger. It's that switch for me. So it became that.
So we clap, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I show a technique, 1, 2, 3, boom, we clap. That's a trigger. It's okay. I went from processing a technique to physically applying it. Like that's why we clap. So it's just that break in mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, definitely. So another thing I wanted to get into. I went through, and I've said this. I've said this in other interviews and whatnot. I went through a really rough personal tragedy, which led to me, almost destroying, completely unraveling as a man. I lost my son, and I was a huge part of me, rebuilding myself and finding myself again was coming to your academy and training. And one of the things that resonated with me, and one of the things that made me say this is the place where I'm going to come was your overcoming your own personal adversity and being an insanely mentally strong, resilient dude. And your personal story, which is not like mine, but is also crazy in its own self, inspired me to help me rebuild myself and find my mental strength again, coming through tragedy. So I wanted to touch on that because you don't really talk about this much because you don't, it's not that you shy away from it, but it's not your identity. It's not like you want sympathy for it, so you just fucking push on. But you, in 2000, you were already doing jiu-jitsu. You got shot in the face.
No,
never happened. No, it never happened. So
never heard the story.
Yeah, so I do want to hear that story because you coming through that and not becoming, not allowing that to make itself your identity as a victim had a huge impact on me as a man. So I'd like for you to share that with us because I think it's a valuable story.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I've done quite a few podcast interviews, and everybody wants to know about the story. And I never mind telling it because, like you said, it kind of helped you. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if it'll help somebody, the more people hear it, the better. So yeah, I was a blue belt. It was actually February 20th, so it was 2 weeks before the IBJJA opened, the Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And me and AJ, my wife now, we were just dating at the time. We lived in a little apartment in Castleton, and which is like a suburb of northern Indianapolis. We were actually going to my mom's house that evening. I had to work the next day, so it was a Sunday evening. I had to work the next morning, and my wife did not. And we had called to order a pizza. So we were going to my mom's house to watch my little sister, because my little sister lived with her. So we called, ordered a pizza. Well, I took the back road to pick up the pizza, and AJ, she took the interstate. So I'm sitting at the stoplight, and if you envision this, there's there's two turn lanes, right? So we both turn left, and I'm in the right-hand left turn lane. Okay, so car pulls up next to me, and I'm literally half a mile from my apartment, and it looked like somebody waved. It's out of the corner of my eyes, see some movement, and I look over, and there's this guy in the passenger seat, and he's just, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, they're going bonkers, right? And I'm like, whatever.
Right.
Like, it's 8:30 on a Sunday night, homie. Like,
Right.
What's
And
wrong with
you're
you?
not an overly emotional dude.
Yeah.
You're like, whatever.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And man, this dude is just going off. And I was like, I didn't cut him off in traffic because I'd just been sitting at this light and he's just running his mouth. And I don't even remember what he said. It was February, it's cold, windows are up. And his girlfriend, she's driving the car. She leans up and she's like, just makes this like, hey, don't mess with him motion, And I was like, yeah, I'm not planning on it, whatever. So I'm just sitting there, 10 and 2. And she ends up pulling the car forward, kind of almost onto the lane a little bit where we can't really see each other. And I was like, cool, man, like I don't have to beat this guy up today. And next thing I know, the car pulls back. And as it pulls back, he's still a little bit ahead, but he pulls this like silver 9mm out. And I didn't remember him saying this until we went to trial, but he goes, "Are you afraid of this?" And I was just going to just drive out of the turn lane and go straight. So I didn't want to hit anybody or like slam into a car and then get shot.
Right.
so I take a quick glance, and before I even got my foot off the brake, like boom, it was like my head exploded. And I'm laying there in my passenger seat. And I had my seatbelt on. So like the bullet hit me in the cheek, drove its way in, hard enough it broke my seatbelt retractor. Like the thing that stops you when you get into a car accident.
Right.
Like the impact was enough that it broke that. And so I'm laying there and I'm deaf and I'm blind. Like I just hear this horrid loud ringing. I'm blind from the impact and I probably have blood in my eyes. I was like, holy crap. And so I lay there for probably, felt like a long ass time, and I'm sure it was like half a second.
So you didn't even hear the gunshot?
No. I mean, it was immediate. So then I had this like quick realization, like, man, I'm deaf and blind. Like I could have bullets whizzing by me. This guy could be walking up on me to finish me off, like not hanging out. So I just hit the gas and I stayed down. I was literally driving, completely deaf, completely blind, head down, just honking my horn. And I kind of, got my head up a little bit and I'm blinking. I'm starting to see little dots of light here and there. And I drove probably like 2 blocks. So I'm up on the overpass, right? And I ended up kind of just clipping the rear end of this other car. And I was like, okay, like I've gotten far enough that there's no way this guy's still coming after me. Like there's no way his girlfriend is driving him
right.
to chase me, And so I throw it in the park, and at this point I can kind of see again. And I get out, and this is like well before like we had cell phones or anything. So I get out, and the guy whose car I had hit is standing outside of his car on the cell phone. And so I was like, "Hey man, like I just got shot. Please call 911." And I think I had my hand on my face or whatever. And I remember I went up and I kind of leaned on his car, and as I leaned, blood was just like just shooting out of my head like you're pouring water out of a gallon, just
right.
I was like, holy crap, man, I just hit this guy's car, now I'm bleeding all over it. I was like, I'm gonna go over here. Like,
in the middle of this, you're like, I don't want to be rude and bleed on this guy's car.
I was like, oh man, this guy's been through enough. Poor guy. And so I go over and I kind of kneel down, and I kneel and I'm just like, fuck, like, yeah, this guy hitting it, like, so I'm like, man, like I'm either dead or I have brain damage. So I start doing like math problems in my head. I'm like trying to do geometry and freaking, algebra and
right.
going through jiu-jitsu moves. I'm trying to like remember people's phone numbers and stuff. Just trying to like get myself thinking, like, access different parts of my brain, I guess. And I think it probably helped keep me from going into shock too, But I'm sitting there and I look up and there's like a sheriff walking toward me, and he had seen me hit the car, but nothing else had happened. And I just remember I was like, hey, like some fucker at that light just shot me in the face. And he's like, give me your ID. It's like, okay. So I reached in my back pocket. I remember just throwing my wallet at him, and he's like, all right. And then there's like another, I think she was a sheriff's deputy also, and she's like, lay down. And he's like, no, stay up. And they argue like over whether I should lay down or stay up. And I was like, look, I'm good where I'm at. I'm staying right here. Like, I'm not going to lay down and die. I'm going to stand up and die, but I'm not laying down and dying. And so it didn't seem like, man, it seemed quick. Like the ambulance got there and they lay me down and like they start cutting my clothes off. And I was like, man, don't cut me. I don't have to cut my clothes off. Like number one is freezing.
Right.
I've lost a lot of blood, but you know, I was like, it's like a new pair of jeans, like one of my favorite shirts.
I wash this out.
Yeah.
Wash this out.
Yeah.
AJ's great at laundry.
And so like they're cutting, and I'm like, get off, taking my coat off, and they're like, stop. I'm like, no, don't cut my freaking coat off.
Right.
So I get my coat off, and they like pin me. They're like, stop, seriously, stop. And I'm like, okay, all right, I guess. So yeah, they cut my shirt off, cut my pants off, and leave me laying there in my freaking briefs, like on the cold concrete. And then finally they throw me in the ambulance. And, yeah, I remember like at that point I'm kind of like fading, right? And I was like, hey man, I'm talking to the EMT in the ambulance with me. And I was like, hey, I'm getting kind of sleepy. He's like, you're okay. I was like, no, I can stay awake. And he's like, no, you're okay. You can close your eyes. I'm like, all right, let's ask this a little more, like, am I going to wake up? He's like, yes. I was like, I can stay awake if I need to. He's like, no, man, like, we've got you. You can go sleep, relax. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, okay, hope I wake up. So I went to sleep and woke up a few times going through doors. And then at one point I'm laying there and like somebody's got my dick in their hand and they're shaving my balls. I was like, I am not opening my eyes right now. Like, I know it's some dude. Like,
if I see some big hairy knuckle dude doing
I was like,
this is gonna fucking
this is
kill.
not,
it's the last thing I see. This
is not pleasant. I don't. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna die. Some freaking hairy dude on my junk. I was like, why are they shaving my balls? I got shot in the head. It's like, this is horrible. And then I'm pretty sure they were gonna run like a catheter. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm pretty sure they ended up not doing whatever they were prepping me to do. And it's like awesome.
They just manscaped you.
Yeah.
They throw like that in
halfway.
They throw that in. Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was a horrible night. You know, I said it's time before cell phones, so like, you know, AJ gets to my mom's house and my little sister's there, and she's no, I take that back. She went to the pizza. Oh yeah, she went to my mom's house, waited for me forever, came back, went to the pizza place, and was like, oh, he didn't pick up the pizza, so she called back to my mom's to tell my sister to stay off the internet because it was dial-up, you know.
Right.
Most people listening to this don't even know what that is, but you used to not be able to use the phone and the internet at the same time. So, but the hospital had already gotten a hold of my sister and just said, hey, we need people up here now.
Right.
And, you know, she was a minor, so they wouldn't tell her what had gone on. So somebody got a hold of my dad as well, and my dad and AJ got there at the same time and walked in. Like, I remember, like, they just kept throwing these heated blankets on me because I was so cold and I was, like, thirsty and, like, sucking an ice cube through a towel because they didn't want me to, like, ingest anything. And, yeah, it was a rough night. But, yeah, I ended up – so I got a 9mm bullet. It basically just hit my cheekbone and just drove straight in, missed my carotid artery by less than a centimeter, kind of collapsed part of my sinus cavity. And then I've got 2 steel plates that just kind of to reconstruct the cheekbone. So, yeah, I'm 95% blind in my left eye. I've got all kinds of issues with my ear. And
right.
So, yeah, overall, not too bad.
So, did they tell you that you would never do jiu-jitsu again, or?
I don't really remember them saying that. There was a long period of time where I wasn't able to get choked because of the pressure it would cause on my eye, because there was a lot of damage actually to the back of my eye. Mm-hmm. So I was going through multiple surgeries constantly, and so I was very restricted on what I was allowed to do. I mean, there was a point where I wasn't supposed to lift more than 5 pounds, and like I would literally stand up too fast and just eat it, you know.
Right.
So I'd be sitting on the couch because that's pretty much all I did for a long time, would just sit on the couch. And I'd fiddle fart on web TV, on dial-up web TV, and then like, you know, I'd get to go to the restroom or something and like have to crawl like my first 10 steps. And
right.
But yeah, recovery was kind of crappy.
And did you ever? Well, so for what? How long was it until you were back on the mat?
Well, so technically 2 weeks. So yeah, I was in the hospital about 2.5 days, 3 days. So I said that was like February 20th, and then March 3rd, the academy opened. And so I went, I didn't dress out. But I went to be there, and I went down all the time. Like it was part of my recovery, really. I'd go and I'd sit on the mat and I would just kind of point, and for a long time, like I had lost some feeling in my face and slobber a little bit. I'd be like drooling, like grab the arm. It wasn't quite that bad, but
so you sat on the mat with a fucking bullet in your face and coached.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But man, I want to say it was probably, so that was February. I actually competed. I was back competing by August.
Jesus.
The day after they said I could train again.
The day after they said you could train again, you were competing.
So yeah, I kept going to the doctor. They're like, nope, can't train. And once they released the weight restriction for where they said I could start lifting again, and they said the metal was okay to have impact, I started training a little bit, just doing a couple real easy drills, just kind of get my health back up. I wasn't able to get choked at all because of the pressure it caused on my eye and stuff. And then it was like a Thursday. I had an eye doctor appointment, and he was like, "Yeah, you're good. You can get choked again." Sweet. Drove home, packed my stuff Friday morning, drove to Tennessee. Saturday, competed in a tournament. Did okay. I won my division. I got third in the open, but it was just nice. I weighed in at like 150 pounds because my jaw had actually locked shut from the muscle on the side of my head just contracted and wouldn't loosen up. So I was eating like baby food and Slim Fast shakes and like for way too long. It was like 4 months of like.
So if you want to cut weight for a tournament,
get shot in the head.
Just get shot in the face. Yeah.
Works great. You will definitely lose weight one way or the other.
Right.
It might be all of your weight, but yeah, I was like 150 pounds and just atrophied muscle. Like I was skinny and pale and like wearing my little Valley Tudo shorts out there and doing no-gi.
But you won your division.
I did. Actually, I think that was my first no-gi tournament too. I competed in 3 different divisions. So.
Jesus.
But yeah, it was really good to get back out there, get on the mat. And
did it ever cross your mind that you would never do jiu-jitsu again?
Yeah, I'm sure. It's been 18 years. I don't know. I'm sure I had every thought cross my mind, and at the time, like that wasn't really an option. You know what I mean? Like after you do it for so long, it just becomes part of you. So, I think one of the big changes was I wanted to be a fighter. Like my goal was like UFC, and
and you had some success at MMA.
Yeah, at that point I had 3 fights, and then after I got shot, I took another 8-man tournament. So like 11 months after, I had 3 fights in one night. But that was kind of like let's go with a bang. Let's finish this up.
Right.
Just being blind and like, man, that's
and after the boxing commissions got heavily involved,
yeah,
you can't pass the physical.
Anyway.
Yeah, they won't let you with your vision.
Yeah,
and you fought some kind of notable people even back in that handful of fights that you had.
Yeah, so like my first night out, I was like 18 years old, and I had one fight. I tapped the guy in a minute, and then there was a 4-man tournament going on, and Shoney Carter
Showtime.
Showtime Shoney. He had made it to the final, and a guy named Shad Williams. His brother's actually a famous Renzo Gracie black belt.
Sean, right?
Yeah, Sean Williams' brother. So Shad had broken his thumb in his first fight. He won his fight, but he broke his thumb. And so they came back and they were like, "Hey, Shoney needs an opponent. We made you the alternate." And I was like, "Well, nobody told me I was an alternate." And they're like, "Well, you are, so you can fight for the belt."
Yeah, back in the beautiful days of the Wild West of MMA when it was unregulated and amazing.
Yeah, but yeah, so I went out. We did. So the way it was a 12-minute round and a 3-minute overtime. So it's 15 minutes, but it's 12 and 3.
Right. So one 12-minute round.
Yeah. So we went out and had a nice little fight and went the full 15, and he ended up winning the decision. He threw me all over the place. I never, even being from Indiana, I never wrestled or anything, Speaking of the social anxiety, like I was like, nope.
Right.
I go to school, I suffer for 7 hours, I go home and decompress. But yeah, he tossed me everywhere. So I fought Shoney, and then like 3 months later, I ended up fighting Keith Wisniewski, who later, he was fighting in the UFC as well.
Yeah, the Wisniewski brothers were fucking legends, man.
Oh yeah,
like those guys were warriors.
Keith and Justin, those guys are awesome. But yeah, so those were like my 3 fights. That was all 98, and then like I said, it just kind of stayed with jiu-jitsu more. Like I kept training MMA, but the fights just weren't coming.
Right.
It was kind of Wild Westy, and so I was trying not to do the crazy stuff, and then
the David and Goliath fights and shit that they used to put on.
Yeah.
Like, look, fight this 300-pound guy.
Yeah,
it's gonna be great.
Man, honestly, the first MMA show I ever went to, I remember. Oh crap. Henry Matamoros, who was, man, it said he was like 165. I don't think he was even that big, but he fought Chad Bartlett, who had to have been 300 plus.
Right.
And I just remember them starting and Henry running across the ring and front kicking Chad in the face. I was
Let's get this over with quickly.
Yeah. But yeah, and Henry won. He was, skilled blue belt, and Chad was not. But that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, and Henry went on to be very well known, well known dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're gonna head into wrapping it up, but to be honest, you and I do talk a lot, and I feel like just as the same with the episode with Joel, I feel like there's 10 episodes worth of conversation to have here. So, so I'd love to have you back on and periodically, and you can talk about training and stories and whatever you want. But
okay, yeah, that sounds awesome.
But yeah, you've always you're a part of this even existing. To be honest, the program that I built at your academy with kettlebells, teaching the combat conditioning and the kettlebell class, is what developed into Iron and Blood. So, without you, there would not be this gym, and I'm eternally grateful for you seeing something in me to let me, give me the latitude to build something like that at your place and taking the risk on me in that way. So, I will be eternally grateful. And anyone that ever trains at Iron and Blood comes here to lift. If it was not for this guy, this would not happen. So, whether he's here lifting or not is immaterial. James is not real into weightlifting and whatnot. But James is the impetus for this even happening in the first place, and for me developing as a man mentally and physically. So I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely,
and,
thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to have you on the show again.
Yeah.
All right.
It's fun.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it,
man. Yep. Thanks, guys. And as always, if you like what you see, give the channel a follow. And if you're in Indianapolis and you're interested in training jiu-jitsu, this is the guy. If you're traveling in from Indianapolis and you're already a practitioner of jiu-jitsu, this is the guy.
We'd love to have you.
He's very friendly with people traveling from other places. So, and I'd love to have you here swinging kettlebells as well. So, thanks a lot. And until next time, see you later.